RavenWerks Guild Talk. This is our second installment. We are once again talking about D&D, kind of continuing off of our last conversation. Really quick, in case you haven't seen one of our videos before, we're your hosts. My name is Taylor.
Mikaela.
And last time on Guild Talk, when we were talking about D&D, it was about first experiences, first impressions, what we would and wouldn't change, kind of when we very first started playing D&D. This time Mikaela has come up with a couple more questions that are a little bit more like forward-looking, less so about our first experience itself. And before we get into that, I just want to bring up, just as a quick plug, check out our website if you haven't seen it before. We're still adding new product, including our stickers, t-shirts like this little guy. And we will be at some markets and things like that. So we're starting to do candles, things like that are more...
like witchy decor.
More like small batch, very intentional things. And those will start to be going up on our website as well. Or we'll start putting up on our schedule online when and where we are. So if you're Washington, local, Western Washington, come say hi, check out our in-person stuff. So, let us move on to the main thing.
Yeah, that being said, so as kind of a follow-up on those last questions regarding first experiences and that, my first thing is for you to describe your favorite scenario that made your DM or Dungeon Master say kind of WTF to a scenario that your party was supposed to deal with or that they laid out. Maybe not necessarily that you guys didn't do what you were supposed to, although that definitely certainly happens and can, but as far as like just something that your character played that made your DM look at you like you're a couple watts short of a full light bulb.
Or in my case, question whether or not I should be in a psych ward. So, I guess I should preface this with, I almost always play some sort of chaotic, neutral rogue that tends to be
a kleptomaniac.
More on the creative side. They're not always kleptos. This one particularly was. And so there was lots of situations where my fellow players would either pick me up and bodily move me from places because they could see me getting distracted by something. They knew I was going to be like, oh, shiny. And it did lead to some interesting situations. One of them in particular that I could think of is we were harvesting these plants out in the forest, which the DM did not see it going this way, but somebody was purchasing, and then we realized that it could be used like D&D equivalent of cocaine, and then we started a drug ring, and it was a whole thing. But while we were out there, we got attacked by a guy who was being sort of controlled / possessed by some higher fae entity that we never got answers on. And he had this brand that was glowing that we did not know at the time was what he was being controlled through. It was shiny. We killed the guy in defense of ourselves. And I decided that I would cut it out of his neck and take it and keep it. And I put it in my pocket. And I also had a habit of taming and keeping rodents and things. So my rat that was in my pocket and myself, because we had direct skin contact with it and were still around it, kind of got possessed by this fae thing, and then they had to kill me and bring me back to life to get it out of me. It was a whole thing. There's been other stuff. There's been lots of things. But that's the one that I think the DM was most like, why would you cut this off somebody's neck and stick it in your pocket? Like, it was very left field.
Fair. That is a fair response.
Like, there's other ones that he kind of went, but, like, he could logic through why it popped into my head, where he was like, oh, it's shiny, okay, you could grab this, I could see where you're going with it. This one, it was very much like, do we need to have a conversation meta? Like, why did this even occur to you? So, yeah, I think that's my biggest one.
I think mine actually, and you may have heard, guys, if you follow the blog, I did bring it up in a previous blog post because it is one of my favorite unconventional interactions. In my very, very first D&D campaign, we were playing with Thomas's brother and a couple of their friends, and my brother-in-law's girlfriend was our DM, and we were supposed to be scaling to the top of this mountain where there was a temple that basically gave you access to the inside of, I mean, it was the inside of the mountain, but it was essentially like a multi-level dungeon, like network of tunnels. And we were looking for this group of dwarves that had been being like kidnapped and taken hostage. And there was this thing with like possessing children. It's a long story. But on en route to the top of the mountain, we came across a camp, a relatively large camp of goblins. And it was implied that said goblins would be hostile and impede access to the top of the mountain, which would usually lead to combat with said group because Thomas's brother played a very enthusiastic paladin. But two of our party members were already at like half health. It was Thomas and I's very, very first campaign, so we were incredibly low level, and it had been a rough day. So we used a combination of Mage Hand, my character's pygmy dragon Pipsqueak, a little tiny frog totem that we had picked up in loot someplace else, and a very good illusion to convince said band of goblins that one of our party was their god, and convince them more or less to joyously throw themselves off of a cliff as a blood tribute to us. So we didn't get the experience points that we really needed to then help complete the rest of the dungeon. So technically it was creative, but we also kind of stabbed ourselves in the foot.
And we had just been talking about, too, the frog totem thing reminds me that at one point I had to act out a thing that I did where I was in a frog hoodie and I zipped it up and seduced a water elemental. So, that one was more of a what the fuck from me, though, than the DM, though. I think he really just wanted to see me...
He wanted to see how far he could push it.
Yeah, me sexily ribbiting in a frog hoodie. So... Okay, moving on to the next one. So, what is your dream D&D crossover? And I'm not going to bring up the examples on here because I know Mikaela's going to use a couple of them, and one of them is kind of mine too, so...
Crossover. So, like, as far as, rather than just playing, like, standard D&D world or... traditional homebrew. I mean, any of these would have to be homebrews, but as far as using other formats and like fandoms and things that are out there, I have to put on the list Lord of the Rings because that is my all-time high fantasy like canon. If we're going stereotypical, I want Middle Earth. But outside of that, my two favorites are if you know what the Fraggles are, and if you don't, I'm sorry, I can't help you. It's like the Muppets but better, and I think it would be hilarious to have a group of your friends have to create their own Muppet, and knowing like not Muppet but like Fraggle, and knowing how they behave and like the zany culture of the Fraggles, I think would ensue in some like really good shenanigans.
I want to be a doozer.
I see, and I'm like, I want to be a doozer. And then my other one, like, silliness aside, short of the Lord of the Rings, my all-time favorite book series is The Symphony of Ages. And if you haven't read The Symphony of Ages or you haven't heard of it, go find them. They're fantastic.
Yeah.
I think that world crossover, there is the author Elizabeth Hayden has layered so much believable, authentic fantasy, but through the laws of fantasy, realistic lore, that I think there are some really cool class possibilities. I think there are some really awesome quest possibilities. Just in the end of the book series itself, there are so many upcoming problems that, like, it could be thousands of years in the future, and your party's problem could be to solve one of those ongoing issues. I think that there is so much potential there, and it would be, in some ways, like my inner child's high fantasy dream come true. So I think those, for me, are it.
The roots, being in the roots and that would be just like a whole arc all on its own.
Yeah, they have like
totally different worlds.
They have like some species crossover, so instead of like your traditional elves, you would have to go like Lyrin, but they've still got Furbolg. They're like the Dracians. I think would be
a lot of really cool things.
There's so much you could pull from in
and
that
like
world.
some of the NPCs that could be pulled that were like long living, just like would be really fun as a DM.
Part of the premise of the books, without giving it away, is due to some weird world building situation stuff. There is a group of people that are bordering on immortal, and we're talking like an entire generation from all different species of people have this weird thing happen to them where they stop aging. So like there's so much potential there.
I would want to do it like later, like after the book series, because it could be. Anyways, I'm digressing.
I'm like, the book series ends like 2,300 years after the whole thing happened.
I know.
That last book really like right in the fucking heart.
I read the last one. I know you told me, and I just like don't, because I would cry the whole time.
Yep,
so anyways,
I did.
So anywho, my own answer. Sorry, we went down a little rabbit hole right there. My own answer. So one of her examples on here I'm currently in, and that probably would have been my go-to answer until I'm already in it. So One Piece. Because that's a whole world. Like, it's an expansive world with multiple islands, different cultures. Like, it's very built out and very layered. And Oda is a freaking genius. And so there's just, like, so many different things to pull from. Don't get me started. Anyways, I'm a huge One Piece fan. I've been watching it forever.
This is a hill we will always disagree on.
Yeah. No, right. And I've been watching One Piece for, like, 20 freaking years now at this point. So, and reading and just One Piece. So, that would be a thing, but obviously I'm in a campaign currently, have been for a little over a year, so, I'm living out that lovely D&D fantasy at the moment. And then I agree with the Fraggles, and without giving too much away because she's in my campaign, I have managed to integrate that in there somewhere, but I'm not going to tell them who and what they are, so if she figures it out, great. But concepts are in there. That is coming up. And then
just don't make me kill Fraggles.
Just don't mindlessly kill. And then
that's not me. Talk to Victor.
Talk to Victor. Yeah, you guys are gonna have to rein the bard in. And then I actually really love the idea of a Harry Potter world, but fantastic beasts and where to find them. So, focusing less on Harry Potter and Voldemort and that. I mean, you can, like, bring those up and, like, have that be canon in that world, but I'd much rather go, like, slightly more Victorian, like, somebody, like, when they're really figuring things out. Like, in Harry Potter, and you read those books and that, they bring up all of these canon-y, like, people in their history books
especially with how long-lived wizards are. There's possibility there. That could be fun.
So I just feel like I would want to go more that route and maybe a little bit more like steampunky, because they do have stuff, right? Like the just some of the different machines and that they have. They're obviously magical based, not steam, but kind of going that
technology route. Meets magic crossover. They do have a fair bit of that.
Some of the real world stuff, but it's kind of twisted a little bit darker.
And that would be cool because that gives you a fine blending of, like, your, in a weird way, your isekai, like, world crossover fascination where you get just enough of the real world to be able to pull from reality, like mundane reality.
Yeah, and she knows I'm a sucker for the isekai, like, falling into a different world concept anyways, so that would give me that.
That could, if you didn't go, like, as much as I love Harry Potter, if you didn't go stereotypical, like, Harry Potter generation, they're all alive and you're in that plot, then I think that could be super cool because there is a lot of, like, meta lore you could pull from.
Yeah. Well, and even just, like, locations. Like, you could still have, Hogwarts, etc. It's just, like, different people there because it's, I would want to go prior to Harry Potter, maybe
even
not
like
after.
even like pre-Marauders, I would say.
Yeah, like pre that, very, like, they're still figuring things out, maybe even when the original house masters were there, like Godric Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Slytherin, like, that would be a cool era to be in.
I like how the only founder whose name you know is your own house, so
I know the others. I do know the others, but he gets a pedestal.
Okay.
Anyways.
Fair.
And then
I think, so last question, and I will let you interpret this to some degree because I know you. What character or type of character would you want to build or play next? It could either be, like, the type of character you've never ever played before, or if you already have a specific character in your mind that you, like, want to be able to build out and act.
Yeah. Because there is cool ways to, like, take somebody like, I don't know, Darth Vader and, like, make a build around that. I would not. But, I mean, I would, but but that's not where I'm going to go with this. No, I know somebody who's possibly doing that, so I'm not messing with that one. So, I feel like I tend to go very dark, sassy characters, a little standoffish. I like going chaotic, neutral, and I'm really, really prone to rogues, and that's just because I find it easy to fall into that character.
She likes to live vicariously through her D&D characters.
Just a little bit. And so I would want to try something new, something different, maybe a little more challenging. I feel like my current One Piece character, my closest class, because it's kind of a homebrew thing, would be kind of a druid, and I had considered doing that. It's very different for me. It is a lot more difficult, but I feel like I still have that somewhat snarky, dark character, like character itself, personality. And so I would want to
From what I've heard, yes, you're a murder doctor.
I am, just a little bit. I'm like, I might hurt you, I might help you, I don't know. And if I do get really pissed at you and I chop you up, I know how to stitch you back together, so it's fine. So, I feel like I would want to go something. It's fine as long as you don't die. I feel like I would want to go something that would be harder for me to play character-wise. So something bright and bubbly and happy and like go lucky, like kind of a fluffy Care Bear character. I don't know that I would necessarily know what class, but I just like I would want to play with a character that would be very like difficult for me to stay in character, because I feel like that would be a
challenge.
A growth thing. Yeah, I would go for something that's a challenge.
Well, a challenge for you.
For me.
See, and I'm like, this is where you can tell that, like, yes, we're related. We have some very different personalities. Because on the flip side of this question, most of my characters, as opposed to her chaotic, have been lawful good with a very strict moral code. It might not be everybody else's moral code, but they have a very strict moral code. And I am more or less a squishy in real life. So I feel like all of my D&D characters have been things whose first reactions have been to hit first and ask later. I think my next D&D character, I'll take a two-pronged thing with this, because technically speaking, the next character that I would really want to build, I technically have. I just haven't gotten to play him yet because it's for her campaign that we're getting ready to start. And the challenge with that one is going to be that it is a adolescent-ish aged 24-year-old perpetually mutated, magically stunted pygmy dragon sorcerer. And not only have I never played a magic wielder, I'm usually a barbarian or a ranger. But also, if you know me, my nickname's Motormouth for a reason, and he can't talk. So I'm going to have to figure out how to play.
You can, just not in anything that the other players will understand.
Unless one of my party members happens to speak Draconic or Dwarvish through a weird twist of backstory, nobody will be able to understand me, and even then, he doesn't have fully developed vocal cords yet, because he's still considered young, so, like, he's learning to telepathically communicate short blips of information, but for the most part, my chatty ass is going to be reduced to pantomiming. Which will be fun. But outside of Pip, like, if I was going to create a brand new character, I'm going to say, if we're going with the angle of Mikaela getting her Symphony of Ages crossover, I want to build the closest thing that I could to Grunther.
Yeah.
Which in that book series is a half Furbolg, half Ben-Guardian, like, giant behemoth of a warrior. But he's also kind of like a natural protector. He's the ultimate authority to be obeyed at all costs, is what one character has named him. So I think I would do a half orc, half Furbolg, but instead of, as much as he could be a tank, I think instead of building him as a barbarian or like a berserker, I would go cleric. Because especially if we're taking place after the end of the Symphony of Ages story, I know where that series leaves off. And then there would be so much room for my character to have to deal with the challenges of the stigma associated with Furbolg and those species still. and then just get to constantly surprise the shit out of people, which I think would be cool.
I love a good reaction from people. Like, even in an anime or that, like, the part of the reason I go for a lot of the ones where it's, like, the underdog, like, whatever, and it's such an overdone trope to some extent, but I will never not love it, because I love when they pull something just out of left field, and there's such a good reaction to it.
Well, and I feel like then you get the possibility, at least with that character build, I would get the possibility of, like, still being that terrifying, scary, intimidating thing. So, like, with party interactions, my group would be able to use that facade to scare the crap out of people, and then physically I would still have the ability, based off of just, like, sheer size,
through the roof.
to, if I need to, pick somebody up and chuck them. But at the end of the day, I could focus on being a nurturer and a healer, and I've never gotten to play a cleric. And ironically, in every party I've ever played, we haven't had a cleric, so if somebody got injured, we were kind of, dude, you're screwed.
So that's something that I would like to talk to in a future thing as well, with, like, character creation, is, like, to some extent, some races, like, they already have biases against them, maybe or maybe not,
Like, for instance,
depending
if you're
on
a
that world,
tiefling,
right? Like, it depends. And I love when you've got a character class. Sometimes it can be annoying when they, like, are completely the opposite of, like, what that race would be. Like, they're just, like, you know what I mean? Like,
it's unrealistic.
It's unrealistic. Like, some races tend to just be more dark, and if you make them so they're super bubbly, but if there's, like, some layer there where they are super bubbly, but they still retain some of the dark, you know what I mean? Like, there's, like, a fine line, and I love that, being able to play with that.
That's why I'm excited to, we have a blog post coming up about, like, how to build a playable D&D character and a believable one, because there's a difference. Without us getting too much into a rabbit hole, there's a difference between creating a cool character in your head and then being able to execute it.
Yeah.
So...
And I love talking about character creation, even with NPCs, anyways.
Yeah.
But I am going to go down a rabbit hole, because that's what I do. So, mum's the word.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. I think that was all 3 of our questions. I think that's the end of it. Don't be a stranger, like I said. Check us out online. Check us out at markets if you're local. And
we'll post the ones that are coming up so that you know ahead of time.
Yep. And if you haven't noticed, I have done a lot less of the, like, blog posts recently. Mikaela's been kind of chugging along with that, but you're about to see a little bit more of me on there again. So just keep an eye out.
We have some exciting partnerships hopefully coming up soon that we're... Again, mom's the word at the moment, but, like, when the moment is right and hopefully things pan out, we'll be able to bring you some new stuff soon. And we are still kind of chugging along and kicking as far as, like, making career moves to put us in the position to really kind of take this from grassroots growth to hopefully, like, really good trebuchet launch.
Yeah.
So,
well, in partnerships, we're talking products. We're talking maybe getting some people in here for interviews. Lots of good stuff coming up. And also, I don't know if I mentioned this at the very beginning, but part of our long-term goal with our brick and mortar is to have a bar there. We did open up another Instagram specifically, since I personally work as a bartender, and now I do freelance bartending. So take a look at that too. It's RavenWerks Bartending. You can find it on our main Instagram, and there's going to be a lot of, like, tips and tricks for that, new recipes, things like that. So
yep. So I think last notes are, do us a favor, follow, subscribe.
Yep.
And then if you have a moment and you are feeling so inclined, in the comment section below, if you would do us a favor, I mean, we'd love to hear your answers to these things, because part of the whole excitement with D&D is that community and the connection.
Yep.
And you sometimes get some really cool character ideas from people, but also if there is a specific area of D&D, if you are looking to want to play and you aren't sure where to start, or you haven't seen that blog post yet, if there are any particular questions that you would like answered, we love hearing those, because it helps not only point us in the right direction for future blog posts of, beginner baseline things that we can help you with, but also you may then get to see your question featured in a future video. So
Don't be a stranger. Have a good one.
Toodles!